what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We're on episode 152, coming at you live on another early Saturday morning. And Justin, like we always say, we seem to get our best work done on Saturday mornings, it seems like.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Even, when we do these Zoom like this, I still like it because it gives me a jump start to my day. And Saturday seems to be my most productive day of the week at the home anyways.
Yeah. And I have to continue to tell people that, like, even though I'm used to getting up early and I do it every day, it's not always the easiest task. So sometimes, like, there's like that little bit of a facade where it looks like if you do something with regularity that it's easy. Like, obviously it becomes easier. It's like dieting. Like someone who diets year round or eats on a good nutrition plan or exercises regularly, people need to understand that there's still days where you don't want to do it. There's still days where you don't want to go to the gym. There's still days where you don't feel like eating the foods that you have to eat. Like, certainly that's pretty common in any aspect of life. Like, even if you are very hardworking and have a good job, there's days where you typically don't want to go. So I don't know. I just feel like that's worth mentioning because some people, I think, get caught up in the fact of giving too much, almost like giving too much credit for something like that. Like, people say, like, oh, it's amazing that you get up every morning. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's not always the easiest thing in the world. Trust me. There's days where I would much rather sleep, unfortunately.
Right. Absolutely.
The key is just to, if you can, try to minimize those days. Obviously easier said than done, but I try to make those days minimum. Really, for me, stuff like that always is the night before. So, like, my dad, he always used to say, tomorrow starts today. And he would always, like, be super
it's the way you plan.
What's that?
It's the way you plan.
Yeah, for sure. And he would always try to make sure that I'm sorry, dude, you keep breaking up. I think I keep overstepping.
It's all good. No, I was just saying it's just about how you plan the night before to have a successful morning. But what would he say?
He would always tell me that the one thing that I needed to do is always get ready the night before. And so even as like a little kid, I like, even though I didn't have many responsibilities, like, for example, my clothes, I knew exactly what clothes I was going to wear as a kid because I went to a private school that had uniforms. So I wore the same thing every day, but I would still get in the process of taking my clothes out and hanging them up in a certain, like, on my like clothing tree in my room and making sure that they were ready and had my underwear and my socks laid out. And if I had, practice after school, making sure whatever sport it was, I had the bag packed. And so that kind of carried over into like adult life where I do everything the night before. So, like, even like, for example, my clothes, I actually put them into my car because I shower at the gym. So I put my gym bag in the car. I hang my dress clothes in the back of my car. Like, I have everything. The only thing that I don't have physically in the car ready to go is my my lunch and my lunch box with my meals in it. And the only reason for that is because some of them need to be refrigerated. So realistically, I could get up first thing in the morning. I could grab, and this is generally what happens. I grab my food out of the refrigerator, put it into my gym bag, zip my gym bag up, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, and then I could head out the door. Now, sometimes I like to shower before the gym. I shower after the gym, obviously, but sometimes I like to shower before the gym, just on those days that I'm exceptionally tired because it helps wake me up. But really, I could be in and out of the house in 5 minutes before I start my day just because of that proper planning. So that's one little way that makes getting up a lot easier,
Absolutely. It's kind of a funny talk, like, side note, but I can remember the days where I never even considered needing to take a shower in the morning to wake up. Like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. But now I either have to wash my face with cool water or take a cool shower in the morning just to wake up sometimes. Like, I think that's part of what you're getting older, because sometimes it's like, no, I gotta wake this body up. So gotta get the cool water on me.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing is, like, when I think about it, I obviously have a lot easier time getting ready and doing things when I'm tired at night versus when I'm tired in the morning. So like there it's like a different type of tired. Like at night I can always kind of force my way through things. So if I get home late at night and I have to go to bed, it's much easier for me to get those things ready that night versus telling myself because I'm guilty of that like everybody. I mean, that's a habit that started even as early as like high school where oh man, I don't feel like doing my homework tonight. I'm just going to set my alarm, wake up extra early and do it tomorrow morning. And then the unfortunate reality is when that tomorrow morning comes, I am in no way, shape, or form prepared to do the homework or even physically capable of it if I'm that tired. So I just try to
Right.
make that known to myself, like remind myself, like, hey, dude, I know that it seems like a good idea now because you're tired to postpone that till tomorrow morning, but if you don't do it now, you're going to regret it tomorrow morning. So that's kind of like just a different avenue of discipline I think about. But speaking of actually doing things in a timely manner and doing them when you have you continued to do what we talked about last week about the 2 minute tasks? Like if something takes less than 2 minutes, doing that first. Because I remember last week we talked about that. You said you were going to
Yeah.
start implementing that.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is I kind of forgot about it, but
Hmm.
if I'm doing like a live autopsy or thinking about like moments throughout the week, I can remember several different things where subconsciously I stopped what I was doing and just handled something that I said I'll do later.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I was talking to one of my teammates yesterday, and she was doing a administrative task for me, and she said, "Well, when you get stopped, no worries, just send me it over via text or email, and I'll handle that." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, when I get where I'm going, I'll do it." And then I pulled over and just did it because it was like it's only going to take me 30 seconds to send this email. You know, it's like 5 words. It's just a
Yep.
reminder. So that's just one thing. It's just one of the days, one of the things throughout the week that I thought about. Like, yeah, actually, I actually did, and it made my week a little more productive. I think. I mean, I think it. I need a larger sample size, obviously. So I'm going to continue doing that because it does feel like it made the week productive. So,
Mhm.
unless back end work, like less. Oh, I got to remember to do this and remember to do that, and it gives you more time to handle the larger things that take more time.
Yeah. And if you're like me, because I have this problem where I have a lot going on, but everybody does, so I can't use that as an excuse, clearly. But for me, like when I have something to do, if I put it on the like the proverbial back burner like that, what happens is to be honest, I forget to circle back around to it. So if there's someone that I need to send an email to, or
Yep.
someone that I need to call, or someone that I need to text back, for example, just like the basic communication stuff, I'll say, "Oh, I'm going to contact that person here in an hour." And then an hour goes by and I forget to do it. And then 2 days go by. And then I have to explain to the person how I'm an idiot because I completely forgot to text them back, even though I said I was going to. So it kind of like mitigates the opportunity for me to look like a dummy by just doing it then and there. And
Yep.
I feel like that's been, again, I know I harped on it last episode, but it's been I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it's almost like borderline life changing because I've gotten so much more done because of that. So for people that don't know what we're talking about, last episode Justin and I talked, and I saw this strategy online. I forget who I had it from, and I wish that I knew, but it was on Twitter, I believe, when I first saw it, where it was a strategy that you can use for productivity, almost like a productivity hack, so to speak, where if you have a task that you know you need to do and it pops in your head and it takes 2 minutes or less, do it right now. So, like the obvious examples that Justin, you and I are using are like contacting people, like send a text message, make a phone call, whatever. And I've been doing that in the past, like the one that I'm bad about is emails. Like I always check my emails and I live by my emails, but I don't always readily text people back right when I should because I'll think, oh, I'll get that later. I got to finish this right now. But I can deviate away from like long-term projects for the short-term communication stuff like that. And it's really, really helped me be more on top of things and kind of taken a lot off of my plate because those little things don't accumulate and become overwhelming for me. Like I have this problem too of and it's not necessarily a problem. It's actually sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad. And we talked about this is how I like to call people when I'm in the car because sometimes I it takes too
Yeah.
long to text a thorough response. So like I'll talk to people in the car on my way home from work or my way to work or whatever. And sometimes that actually gets dicey too, because then I have too many people to call. And what ends up happening inevitably is I push people back. So I'll talk to people and say, hey, I'll text three different people throughout the day who want to talk to me. I'll say, I'll call you after work tonight. And then I only have like a 20-minute, 25-minute tops commute home from work. So sometimes that only fits one phone call in. So then the handful of other people that I said I would call them, once I get home, I don't even have time to call them when I get home because I got stuff to do to get ready for the next day because oftentimes it's late. And then the vicious cycle starts again of accumulating work. So last week's theme of
Right.
the episode was like, and I thought about it all the time this week was last week's theme of like trimming fat, the analogy of trimming fat. How do you lessen the weight of the boat and make it easier to float? Like, what are some things that you do week to week, that you're the original phrase that I said was cutting corners, but we mentioned how that sounds almost like cheating the system. But, were there any instances in particular this week where you felt like you trimmed the fat, for lack of a better phrase?
Absolutely. 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 And the more I think about it, the more I think about times where I I didn't like set those aside to talk about. Like I didn't think about them at the time, but now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, there were several instances where in weeks past I would have told the employee or the person, "Hey, I'll handle that when I get back to the office, or I'll handle that later."
Mhm.
And instead, I was like, "You know what? Never mind. Let me do that right now. I'll do it right a second." And it is. It frees up a lot of time for the bigger tasks, like the more critical tasks or the more time consuming things.
Mhm.
It gives you more time to do those, and if it almost essentially made those tasks feel a little less tasky, even because you took all the little tasky things out.
Yeah, I think that's like, well, I obviously it's physical in nature or literal because you don't have those things to do, so you have more free time. But I think there's kind of a mental aspect to that as well, where for me, I get overwhelmed if I have a ton of things to do. So, like, let's say I have 10 things to do, even if seven of those 10 things combined will take 20 minutes. It's just the fact that I know that I have those seven different things to do. So if I get rid of those seven things, let's say I freed up 20 minutes now, it feels exponentially larger though, just because I don't have the mental aspect at play of like me thinking, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that. And then it at times becomes overwhelming. I allow it to be overwhelming, even though I shouldn't do that.
Right.
So the other thing
Oh,
that I
yeah,
wanted to bring up
absolutely.
with all of this is the fact that I thought it was interesting how you mentioned you find yourself, because this is important, you find yourself like whenever you have something that you have to do. You mentioned this week how there were times when you said I'll do that later, and then you said that you stopped and said, oh no, never mind, I'm going to do it now. Because I think that I don't want people to be disillusioned when we talk about this stuff, like these different strategies that you and I try to make our lives a little bit better, that it's not like something that's going to be super easy from the jump. It's not a strategy that you're going to be able to implement day one and then just cut all the bad habits out. Like there's times where you want to put something off and then you remember, no, I'm not supposed to. I have to do that right now. I'm just going to take care of it right this very instant versus letting it fester and build and accumulate over time. So I like that you said, like, you had like that transparency of saying, hey, there were a bunch of times where I said I'm going to do it later. And then I thought, nope, I got to divert. I got to change course and get it done right now. So that was pretty cool because I think that's a good lesson for
Right.
people to understand. It doesn't come super easy.
Yeah, it's a lesson in like self accountability. We said we're going to do something, we got to do it. So it's not that doesn't mean just because you say you have to do it because you said you're going to do it doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's going to be second nature the first time you try to do that. Like it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be hard, but You know, my mom always told me when I was growing up, if it isn't hard, it's not really worth doing in
Yep.
most cases. So, um, I enjoy the challenge of challenging yourself to rise to the occasion, so to speak.
Yes. And speaking of working hard and tasks that are hard, I actually it was kind of like divine intervention where I've had a conversation that was brought up naturally, not by me. So I didn't bring up the topic, but the topic was brought up on three separate occasions this week. So someone approached me, we got into a discussion and organically worked its way to us talking about this topic. And it happened three different times. So I feel like if it happens twice, that could potentially be a fluke. But if it happens three times, it's certainly like, something at play there. So I want to bring up this topic with you and get your thoughts because, like most things with our podcast, we're trying to find paths to be successful. And like most things, it's nuanced where there's one end this way, one end that way, and I don't really know because it's not always a perfect line that you can draw in the sand. So what I want to do is we'll go to a quick commercial break and then I want to get your thoughts on this topic because like I said, I had it brought up by several people. So I think that you and I discussing it together would be good because you might be able to offer me some insight.
Okay.
So let's go to a quick commercial break and then I'll ask you those questions when we come back.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we're back from our commercial break. All right. So prior to the break, Justin, you and I had not like technical difficulties, but we noticed that there was a little bit of a lag between me speaking and you speaking. So we apologize to our listeners if there were some awkward, like lengthier pauses, but it was just because of like the Wi-Fi connection. So anyway, we talked about how I've gotten this topic brought up to me in a little bit different context each time, but the conversation ultimately led its way back to this. So one of the things that has been brought up to me this week has been balancing doing work and then having your own time. So whether that's family time or just freedom to do whatever you want. And I basically with all these people, I said that it's really come full circle where yeah, I don't want to use this phrase, but back in the day, so whatever that time period is, I mean, actually for most of human civilization, like we as a human species have worked to sustain life. So whether that's hunting and gathering and getting the necessary, like the needs, your vitals just to sustain your life, or in the industrialized sense of in the Western world of working a job to get money to buy those things. So you don't have to go do that. But regardless, everybody worked. And, generationally speaking, it seems like people worked harder and harder years ago. Whereas now people have become increasingly more self-aware of how rare time is, right? Like time is fleeting and they're losing it on a daily basis. And there's going to be a day where, heaven forbid, you may regret not spending more time to smell the roses, like spending time with your family, doing things that you want to do and living your life because you only have one opportunity. And I said that was a very welcomed thought. I think that it's good for people to feel that way. And part of that is like knowing that your time is valuable. So like, okay, my time is valuable. I'm not going to spend time slaving for this person to make them rich. I'm going to do what I want too. Or if I don't feel like going into work because I have things that need taken care of in my own life, I'm not going to worry about upsetting my boss or upsetting anyone. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think that that's a very, very powerful disposition to have. And it's a very good tool in your arsenal is the ability to say no, which we've talked about before and all that stuff. So then I think that has pushed too far though.
I
And
agree.
what brought it up was like inflation And not that inflation is directly correlated with lazy people, but some of these jobs that are out there are offering an insane amount of money because they can't find workers. And people are
And
like,
they still can't find them.
yeah. And people are above working $20 an hour, $25 an hour mindless jobs because they think that like, oh, well, I value my time, which is good, but like, can too much of a good thing be a bad thing? Like you talk about the difference between medicine and poison is the dose. So something
Yep.
could be very helpful or it could be deadly. And I think that people's like search for more time and comfort and life enjoyment can come at the expense of life passing you by too fast because you never have the opportunity to get the things that you want because you're too busy avoiding the work that it takes to get that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I have a phrase that I used to use on this topic, right? And I think it needs critiqued, and it's going to be an active critique. But the phrase I used to use a lot was "work to live, not live to work." But unfortunately, and it feels like a lot more today's society, the younger generation, especially, so our age, really and below, like the millennials, and then below, want to remove that work part out of the living equation.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it because even if you went back generations and generations ago to the early days, prior to the major technology shift and stuff, work was never designed, like human life was never designed to not have to sustain work. It just was a different meaning. Like if you didn't go and do a job for somebody, you did your job on your homestead or at your house, or you had to work. Life system, the ability to sustain life requires work. So I think the work to live or not live to work needs to be the work needs to be put back into it, because it cost, in today's society it costs money to do anything. So you had to, in order to gain money, unless you are independently wealthy, you have to work.
Yep.
But I think it is important to go back to, we work to live. We don't have to live to work. It's, for somebody. I think that was the problem. And in my opinion, that's the problem is nobody wants to work for somebody. Like nobody on the lower people, us, the labor force, the lower on the food chain don't want to work for the man anymore.
Yep.
But they don't possess the ability right now to be the man that people work for.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point about how people, yeah, for sure, because people, that's like something that's everywhere now, is the importance of like working for yourself and worrying about your life. Because I think that it kind of, gosh, I don't want to like say something that's so exaggerated, because this is not comparable to slavery at all, because you're literally getting paid for it. So it's the exact opposite of slavery. But
right.
People kind of analogize it to that. They make it seem like going to a job and working for someone is a form of slavery, because like taxation being theft, number one, and then you're using your labor and your skills to make somebody else money in addition to what you're making yourself, which is significantly less than the person you're working for. So I get it. But I think that's a good point, is it's not beneath you to work for someone else, number one. And number two is, and I'm guilty of this as well, obviously, because I've talked about it before. But the other thing too is you may not be ready for that yet, like you said. And I think that's very important to touch on, because just because you have it, like you may have to get a job that you don't want to get initially, because it's going to set you up financially to be able to have a little cash flow and spend a little money to be able to do the things that you want to do in order to like set yourself in a position to work the job you want to work. but I don't think that you can believe that anything's beneath you in terms of like labor, or you shouldn't, at least in my opinion.
Right. I seen a post on Instagram last night, and I'm gonna butcher it because I don't remember exactly, but a professional athlete had a career ending injury, and he said 15 years ago I was down and out. I lost everything with a career ending injury. So I went to Walmart and I started working for Walmart. And it showed the picture that was like associated with the caption was like two rows of different badges with different titles on it.
Mm-hmm.
And first one was just a store, like shelf stalker. And it showed the progression over 15 years. And now he's a store manager of a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't ready to be wasn't ready to be the person somebody was working for that 15 years ago. But because he put his time in and punched the time clock and progressively got better as an employee, he became the employer.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And it's just something that I think there's no like right or wrong answer in terms of like, should you work for yourself? Should you work for someone else? Like, when do you feel like you can go independent in whatever area you're on? And how do you balance your off time? Like, is it okay to take off of work frequently if you feel like it's best for your mental health and for your family? But when can that become too much where you kind of abuse a little bit of a privilege to be able to call off of work on certain occasions or have your vacation time accumulate or whatever? It's just a kind of like a lengthy discussion that I think is worth mentioning. But before we close up shop for the day, when you and I were on commercial break, you briefly talked to me about a question that you were asked by someone in your field, and you said you wanted to just like touch on it real quick. What was that question, and who asked it to you?
So somebody asked me, it was just a employee at work, and he just asked me, he said, so getting into the healthy lifestyle, because like that's a lot of the time that's like an icebreaker for me,
Yep.
is if I'm talking to a new group or um a hesitant group for if everybody doesn't know, I'm in the safety world, so environmental health and safety is my job. So a lot of times I'm talking to employees that have no idea about that industry or that side of our industry.
Uh-huh.
And part of my, introduction to them is, I tell them my backstory, like a 30-second snippet, started out as a truck driver, became a trainer, and just worked my way up through the ranks. Along the way, I lost 200 pounds in a year and started to develop some self-mastery, like some self-mastery skills, just, I feel like I'm just on the brink of developing those skills. I don't even own them yet. I don't have them. I'm just developing them.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just kind of like an icebreaker, and it shows that I've done the thing too. Like I've done the labor portion of the work. So, anyways, the question was, do I have like a top 3 healthy lifestyle hacks? Like, what would, if I had to pick three things to tell somebody to do to make themselves better or more healthy, what would they be? And I know my top 3. You know what I mean? I know my top 3 pretty quickly. Thought in my head. So like I rattled them off. I was like, if you're talking healthy lifestyle, drink water, be positive and but real. So like you can be positive with yourself in every situation, but you also have to be real and acknowledge when you have a failure. And then remember there's to take time for self-care. Like that can be like you and I enjoy self-care is a brutal going to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some people need to get a manicure or pedicure. Some people need to take 20 minutes to get a massage. Or another form of self-care I like is, I find, going and getting a nice new hair, like a new fresh haircut.
Yep.
But remember that going back to the work part is we work to live. We don't need to live to work, right? So part of that working to live is living is enjoying life. So
Mm-hmm.
schedule some time for self-care, even if it's 10 minutes. If it's
Yeah.
10 minutes more than you did yesterday or last week or last year, you're remembering yourself. You got to take care of the body and the mind that does the work for you to survive.
I think I like those three. Those are three very good ones. I also like them because they're different from the three that I would say. Mine is a little bit more physical than mental, although mental ones definitely came to mind. But in the immediate, I think typical like bodybuilder road, like eat, sleep, train. So like I think
Yes.
that the three things that I would give in no particular order would be challenge movement. So challenge your movement capacity. So when you could just say you normally say exercise, right? But I think it needs to go deeper than that. When you exercise, challenge yourself, not just with like how far you can run and how much you can lift, but like what range of motions can you get into? Are you able to climb things? Are you able to lift and carry things? Are you able to almost be athletic? Can you jump on things? Can you jump off of things? So I think challenging movement in whatever capacity you're able to do in whatever avenue of training you like, whether it's weightlifting or running or obstacle course racing or boxing or whatever. So challenge movement, eat whole foods, because that pretty much summarizes all dietary techniques is just eating whole foods, single ingredient whole foods, and don't underestimate the importance of sleep. So getting plenty of sleep would be the road that I would go. So basically eat, sleep, train, challenge movement, eat whole foods, and sleep enough on a nightly basis.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have two sidebar conversations off of your points that I'd like to ask questions on those. Um, don't underestimate sleep. Can you make up sleep that you lost?
Uh it's not optimal, but yes.
So you can like you feel like you can backlog miss sleep and obviously not gain it back, but your body can recover from a like a 3 day stretch where you slept an hour or two by sleeping 8 hours,
I think,
essentially.
yeah, I don't, yes, I'll say yes. Convoluted answer, but yes. I'll say not ideal, but yes, you can do that.
Okay, cool. And then more of a statement. I challenged some movement this week. I got home from work early, going back to that work life balance thing, and purposely came home early enough to see, Shay and Sutton, and said, "Hey, let's take her to the park." So we got her ready. We took her to Beaver Local, where the school where we typically record, and let her play on the playground.
Mm.
And there were some bigger kids swinging on the swing set, and she's only 19 months old, but she is fast. She took off running, and she was pretty far away from me, and she was going in the swing path, and I was like, "Oh boy, she's gonna get kicked across the playground." So I took off running, and I jumped over, and you're probably familiar, nobody else is, but there's like rotating stools.
Yep.
I was on the other side of the playground, and I ran and I jumped over one of them like I was a hurdler, and I feel like that was challenging movement, because I've never been a jumper,
Mhm.
like ever. And but yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, so
So
those would be my three. I think challenging movement might be the biggest of them all, just because it's something that in Western society we don't do enough of, man. So I'm glad that
yeah,
you brought that up today.
absolutely. I think it was it's either Jordan Peterson or David Goggins talking this past week, and he was talking about like being in a city. He was in New York or he was in LA, and he was like, everybody's got a bicycle. You know what? I re-listened to the book Can't Hurt Me this past week, and that's where he was talking about. David Goggins was talking about they're in LA and everybody's got a daggone bicycle or a scooter, a sit on or stand up scooter. Nobody walks anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the challenge movement because it's literally that easy, that simple. If you're talking about a healthy hack, is drink water and walk,
Yep. I like it.
and your life can change.
All right, man. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I got to go head over across the road and open up the gym and get after it. I would say start my day, but I like to consider this the start of my day.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 152. As always, we appreciate your guys' listenership, and we look forward to hearing back from you all next week. Unbreakable.